Um, what times in your life truly tested your mettle, and what did you learn about yourself by dealing with them?
It tested me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have to be the suicide of my brother, and seeing when my mother and father were experiencing the sadness and shock and tragedy, and trying to be strong for them, and at the same time feeling really like your world is turned upside down. And it was hard. My dad died 4 months after my brother, and I never told Adam this. This was a hard thing. Your mother was in labor at like 36 hours, and they finally did a C-section when Adam was born. So that was on, I think, an early Sunday morning when Adam arrived. And then I went back home after night, and before calling my dad, my mother was at home watching you, and Christine's mother was also there at the same time. Well, by the time I called my father on Monday, he was overjoyed to hear. He was overjoyed to hear when you were born. You don't remember. He visited us once or twice when you were a baby and you were walking and doing all your talking. You were unbelievable. You had your own language, your own facial expressions. You had your own language. You knew what you were talking. You'd look at us and say, blah, 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 blah. But by the time I called my father Monday, he said, oh, why didn't you call me yesterday? I said, Dad, I was just too tired. So evidently he went, got on his bike, got a bottle of wine, evidently drank the bottle of wine, and then I got a call from the hospital the next day. The surgeon or the head of ER said, your father's a vegetable. And I said, what? Excuse me? Your father's a vegetable. And I was incensed, number one, that he would talk that way, but the shock of hearing my father was in ER and on life support, that was the hardest thing. And so then sad to say about your mother's mother, she heard this conversation on the phone. She said, see, God's punishing him, meaning me, because we had a little argument. She insisted on going to this cheap diner every time on. I said, no, I'm sick of that place. I'd like to go somewhere else. I'll pay for it. So your mother's mother and your mother, they didn't cotton to doing anything that they disagreed with. So anyway, my mother and I headed back to Detroit and saw my dad, and all that moved was his eyes. I brought pictures of you guys to show him, and oddly enough, When I hung up with that first doctor, I asked for the doctor who's his superior, and he was on call. So they put me to him. He was on his boat in Lake St. Clair. And he apologized for the way that doctor had spoken about my father. And he said my father had a serious brain bleed. He had an aneurysm, and he probably would not recover. So then my mother and I moved back to, flew back to Detroit, visited my father. Yeah, he was paralyzed, and after a few days I went back home to go to work, and then my mother called me. She said the doctors said she's got to find a place for him, a nurse's home. So I went back to Detroit, and we looked at some nursing homes that take veterans, and all they were so dirty, and these people just wasting away. And my mother was beside herself. She said she couldn't take care of them because I talked to the nice doctor, and he says, "Oh, you don't have to worry about finding them a home. Unfortunately, your father's never going to leave the hospital." So I think by then my father had developed pneumonia, had a fever. They had a cooling bed, and I had to tell my father the truth, that he had a severe stroke and aneurysm, and he would not recover, and it was okay for him to let go. I told him, we know you love us, and we love you. You need to relax. And he shut his eyes, and I got in bed next to him, and I caressed his head. And that was Father's Day. And I went back to Detroit, and he died Father's Day. My mother didn't call me that night because she knew I was really exhausted. She called me the next day. But yeah, it's just odd way Dad's death and Adam's birth coincided. I was pretty numb there for a few months, and your mother was critical of me. I wasn't bonding with Adam. I would have previously bonded with you, and I typically would put you to bed and read you books. But I eventually got over it. But you never really get over it. Yeah, that's probably definitely the hardest part.